The conspiracy that culminated in the assassination of Abraham Lincoln in 1865 was constructed to be more broad than just that single act of violence. It began as a kidnapping plot devised by Confederate sympathizer John Wilkes Booth, who hoped to seize Lincoln and exchange him for Confederate prisoners of war. As the Confederacy was collapsing and desperation grew, Booth shifted his plans from abduction to assassination. He recruited a small circle of co-conspirators, Lewis Powell, George Atzerodt, David Harold, and others, and assigned each a specific target within the U.S. government to assassinate. Booth believed that killing the nation's top leaders would throw the Union into chaos and revive the Confederate cause. On the night of April 14, 1865, Booth carried out his part of the plan at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. He entered the presidential box during a performance of Our American Cousin and fatally shot President Lincoln with a single pistol shot at close range. Booth leapt to the stage, injured his leg in the fall, and escaped into the night, but he was tracked down and killed 12 days later. Meanwhile, on the same night that Lincoln was assassinated, Lewis Powell, who used the alias Lewis Payne, was assigned to assassinate Secretary of State William H. Seward. Powell forced his way into Seward's home under the pretense of delivering medicine and brutally attacked Seward and several members of his household. Despite the ferocity of the assault, Seward survived, although he would be scarred for the rest of his life. George Atzerodt, tasked with killing Vice President Andrew Johnson, lost his nerve and never even attempted the attack. The failure of these two additional assassinations meant that Booth's broader plan to cripple the federal government collapsed almost immediately. Lewis Powell was captured shortly after his failed attempt to kill William Seward. After a military trial, he was sentenced to death along with Mary Surratt, a co-conspirator, George Atzerodt, and David Harrod. The executions took place on July 7, 1865, in the courtyard of the Washington Arsenal. Following the execution, Powell's body, along with the bodies of the other conspirators, was buried in a simple, unmarked grave within the Arsenal grounds. The government kept tight control over the remains, both to prevent public displays of sympathy and to avoid the conspirators becoming martyrs in the eyes of Confederate loyalists. The graves were located in a restricted area, and access to them was limited. For several years, the bodies remained there largely undisturbed and without ceremony. In 1869, the War Department released the remains to the families of the executed conspirators. However, Lewis Powell's body was never claimed, so it faced disinterment several times, when at some point Lewis's skull was separated from his body, most likely by a cemetery caretaker. In 1884, the skull was taken to Ford's Theater Museum, where it was cataloged as specimen number 2244. In 1898, the skull was taken to the Smithsonian's Department of Anthropology, where it was stored in a bin and forgotten. In the 1990s, Native American tribes requested that the Smithsonian return the bones of Native Americans for proper burial. A skull was then found stenciled with the numbers 2244 and labeled with the letter P and the notation "criminal executed by hanging." Only later was the skull confirmed through archival records and facial comparison through pictures as belonging to Lewis Thornton Powell. In 1994, the family requested the skull and it was taken to Geneva, Florida, where his nearest surviving relative lived. A service was held and the skull was buried in the Geneva Cemetery near the grave of his mother, Carolyn Patience Powell. The rest of his body is believed to be buried in a pauper's grave outside of Washington, D.C. This dual burial creates an unusual and haunting situation in which Lewis Powell's body remains in Washington, D.C. in an unmarked grave, and his skull rests in Florida, making him one of only a few historical figures in American history whose remains are permanently divided between two states.